Hello world, I'm Colleen and welcome to my glamorous life. I'm that almost 50-year-old mom with 3 teenagers here to give you helpful tips, tricks, and honest reviews. Except on Wednesdays when we do weird history and makeup, and that's today. So we're going to talk about the Blood Countess, Elizabeth Bathory. Was she really a vampire? Or was there something a little more sinister going on? We're going to talk about one of the most prolific serial killers in history, who was a woman. Let's get to it. Okay, so let's get to it today. First things first, I want to apologize to the Beauty Chop because when I got this, I thought it said crop and it's the Beauty Chop, and that's my favorite eye primer. So we're going to start with that while we talk about the Countess Elizabeth Bathory de Ciate. Now, I don't speak Hungarian, but she was a Hungarian countess who was born August 7th, 1560. Now, she was a Hungarian noblewoman from the family Bathory, and they owned land in the Kingdom of Hungary, which is now split up between Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania. There's Romania. There's that vampire thing again. She has been labeled in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most prolific female murderer. With good reason, apparently. The precise number of her victims isn't really known, but there were up to hundreds, 300 is the estimate, up to 650 young girls and women that she tortured and killed between 1590 and 1610. And she had collaborators. She had servants who help her do this. Now, they don't know exactly why. There were stories of her bathing in the blood of virgins, but they were written several years after all of this happened. So nobody's really sure what happened. But we are going to use the Jeffree Star Blood Lust palette today, just because we're talking about blood and vampire-y things again. So there's some theory that she inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, but there's nothing that actually kind of ties into that, though she has been called the Countess Dracula and, of course, the Blood Countess. And we're going to go in with Deviant here, this kind of pale lavender to start with. Okay, so she was born on the family estate in, and I'm going to totally butcher this, so somebody who speaks Hungarian, tell me how to say it. Near Bathory in Royal Hungary in 1560. She spent her childhood at the Ciate Castle, and her father was the Baron George VI, Bathory of Ciate, branch of the family. Her brother was a voivode of Transylvania, and her mother was the daughter of, this is like all sorts of inbreeding going on here. She was her mother, Anna Bathory, was the daughter of Stephen Bathory of Somlo, which is another voivode of Transylvania. So it's like, this is like, her family tree didn't fork very much, if you will, because they were all cousins and related. Okay, I think we're going to go in now with, we're going to go in with a little bit of Blood Queen. So her family tree really didn't fork. So could this have contributed? As a child, she was prone to having seizures. Could have been caused by epilepsy because of all the inbreeding in her family. But nobody's sure. At the time, the symptoms of epilepsy were attributed to something called falling sickness, because you would fall, you'd have a seizure. And one of the treatments included rubbing blood of somebody who was a non-sufferer, so who didn't have epilepsy, rubbing their blood on the lips of the person who was suffering. So did they give her a taste of blood when she was little? So that led to some speculation that she was still trying to treat herself in her later life, Another theory is that she was totally trained by her family to be cruel. that she witnessed her father and family just inflicting these brutal punishments on their officers and being taught by family members who involving Satanism and witchcraft, but there's no hard evidence for any of this, but you got to wonder what makes someone do these things. We don't have the theory, I mean, and then you get into her late, I'm going to say her later life, but this really was not that much later. She was engaged at age 10. Now, mind you, people didn't live as long back then, but can you imagine being 10 years old and engaged to somebody? She was engaged to the Count Ferenc, F-E-R-E-N-C, Ferenc Nadas. Boy, I am butchering Hungarian. I apologize to anybody that watches and they're Eastern European, because I don't speak Hungarian. Nadasti family, who's the son of Boris Tomas Nadasti at Fogersfold. Oh, boy, I'm kidding. Anyhow, so it was probably like a political arrangement, because a lot of times families did that. We're going to go in with dungeon right here. A lot of times families engage their daughters very young for political purposes, because it was, what better way to, what am I thinking? What better way to seal a political alliance than through marriage? And in those days, daughters were pretty much used for that purpose. Okay. She didn't get married, though, until she was 15. So it was a pretty long engagement, but she refused to change her last name because her social standing was higher than that of her husband. So she retained the name Bathory. So Elizabeth, when she was married, she was given a household by her husband. It's a wedding gift, the Castle Ciate, which is in the Little Carpathians, which is now, I think, Slovakia. It had been bought by his mother and given to him to transfer to Elizabeth when they got married. So the house was like a country house and had a village adjacent. Now, during the Long War that took place between 1593 and 1606, she was charged with defending her husband's estates, which lay on the route to Vienna. And the threat was pretty significant to the village because it had been previously plundered by the Ottomans and all this stuff. So it was near the border of Royal Hungary and the Ottoman-occupied Hungary. So you have the actual Hungary and where the Turkish Ottomans were occupying Hungary. So it was pretty significant place. And there were several instances where Bathory intervened on behalf of destitute women, including a woman whose husband was captured by the Ottomans and whose daughter had been raped and impregnated. So here she is helping women, but she's notorious for killing them. I'm going to take Your Majesty for a little highlight under my brow bone here. And I don't know. It's kind of weird that she would be known for helping and then be accused of murder. I never realized that. Anyhow, she had a daughter, Anna, who was born in 1585 and later became the wife of Nicola Zrinski. She also had other children. Oriska, who was born in 1590 and who became the wife of Estevan, I think it is, Benyo, Catalin, or Catarina, who was born in 1594, and then Andras, who was born in 1596, and Paul, who was born, that sounds so English when I say it that way, but it's not, who's born in 1598. He was the father of Franz Nadasi, who was one of the leaders of the Magnet conspiracy, whole other thing against Emperor Leopold of the Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire Leopold I. Another story there. So they also, some of the tales and stuff indicate that they also had a son named Miklos, but nobody can confirm that. All right. I am going to go in with a little bit of this Executioner. Really, really dark. I love this. It's kind of a dark purpley black. It's like purple reflex and a black. It's just really cool. Yeah, I'm going to do that out here just to deepen things up because I want kind of a smoky-ish look today. Okay. A little more on the other side. Anyhow, so enough about the history. She has been, her husband died in 1604 at 48, and nobody knows exactly what, but he seemed to have debilitating pain in his legs, and he never really recovered. And basically, he entrusted his heirs and his widow to this Grigory Thurzo, who would eventually lead the investigation against Elizabeth. All right, so the investigation started actually in 1602, so before her husband died. Rumors were started that she was, doing away with people. There's rumors flying before her husband dies. So, okay, we're going to pop in the middle, I think, the pink magic here in the middle. So between 1602 and 1604, so just before her husband died, these rumors were spreading. A Lutheran minister, Esteban Magyari, made complaints against her both publicly and in court in Vienna. So it kind of makes you wonder, what was she doing that a minister was? Okay. And it took some time to respond to the complaints and all that. So finally in 1610, King Matthias II assigned Thurzo, remember the guy that was entrusted with her and her children's care, as the Palatine of Hungary, which, that meant he had to investigate. And so they started collecting witness statements. So by October of 1610, they had 52 witness statements, and by 1611, it had risen to over 300. According to the testimonies, her first victims were girls between 10 and 14, and then she began killing daughters of gentry. So these young girls originally were peasants, and then she started taking in the children of the gentry, promising them tutelage and all this in the promising them tutelage in the art of womanhood and stuff, kind of like, you get to go to court. So their parents were like, sure, send them to Elizabeth. But what they didn't know is what was going on behind closed doors. So there were many suspected tortures and forms of tortures. Girls were burned with hot tongs and placed in freezing cold water, covered in honey and live ants. And she was also suspected of cannibalism. Wow. Okay. So there were reports of having seen traces of tortures on the body, some of which were buried in the graveyard and others in unmarked locations. 2 court officials claimed to have personally witnessed the Countess torture and kill young servant girls. So basically she was preying. She was preying on these girls that would come to her for various things. So she would, initially, basically, she started out with, this is the Laura Geller Quench and Tint Moisture Hydrating Foundation. She would initially bring these girls in as servants. And then she was bringing in the gentry. And that's kind of what got her caught. If you ever noticed, people don't care about the odd missing servant or the odd missing slave. It's always when the upper crust starts losing theirs that they start worrying about what people are doing. Come on, people. So according to Thurzo, he wrote a letter to his wife and said he had an unannounced visit to Elizabeth, and he found a girl dead and another living prey, is what he called it, at the castle, but no evidence that they asked her what happened or what was going on. So you walk in and you find somebody dead and somebody else who's being preyed upon, but you don't ask what happened. That's kind of sketchy. You know, I'm wondering if maybe this woman just had too much power and they went after her or something. I don't know. Okay, this is the Ciate Extraordinary Translucent Setting Powder. I can read. I'm just going to set my face here. It seems though that a lot of his claims is that he, you know, there were claims that he discovered her covered in blood, but it seems to be fictionalized. There's a further, in his further proceedings, that his son Paul and two of her son-in-laws were involved in this, in the Thurzo debated further proceedings. You know, once they figured out that she kind of had done in a few people, he discussed with her son and with her sons-in-law, further proceedings. And a trial and execution would have caused a huge public scandal for this family that, you know, the Bathorys had been around forever and a day, and so did the Sadis. So there's no, you know, they just, it would have been a disgrace to have this trial. So what they agreed to instead was put her under strict house arrest. More witnesses testified, and they heard other accusations, and servants confessed under torture. The servants were tortured by the people trying to find out who was torturing people. So not really credible, if you will. Contour time. There were king's witnesses, but they were quickly executed, so nobody could like counter their story. So it's like these people were brought in, tortured, convinced to confess to something, and then they were killed. It smells like a railroad, but there's so much historical, I don't know. So in January 25th of 1614, Thurzo wrote a letter to King Matthias regarding the capture of her and her confinement to her castle. He like coordinated everything, and she was detained in the castle of Ciate for the rest of her life, where she died at age 54. She wrote that she was locked in a bricked room, but according to other sources, written documents from visiting priests in July of 1614, she was actually able to move about freely, unhindered around the castle. So there's tales of her being bricked up in a room until she died, but there's also counter tales that say, no, she wasn't bricked up in a room. She actually had free reign of the castle, but she couldn't leave. So she was basically under house arrest. If I can open it, I'm going to use this little Lovecraft Beauty blush here that I have. And we're going to blush a little bit. And then we'll finish up our eyes and stuff. Anyhow, so she wrote her will in 1610. Sometime in 1614, she signed the arraignment that distributed all of her stuff and that all of her lands and possessions to her children. And on the evening of the 20th of August, 1614, she complained to her bodyguard that her hands were cold. And he replied, "It's nothing, mistress, just go lie down." And the next morning, she was found dead. So she was buried. How do you pronounce that word? Buried in the Church of Ciate on the 25th of November, 1614. But according to some sources, the villagers were in an uproar over having her buried in their cemetery, so her body was moved to her birth home in Exted, where it was interred in the Bathory family crypt. The location of her body today is actually unknown. The Ciate Church or Castle of Ciate does not bear any markings of her possible grave, so we don't know where she was. Okay, so let's find my brush. Ah, there it is. Okay. We're going to go underneath our eyes just a little bit with the Blood Queen, just because I liked that bright purple color there. And, you know, she's got a huge reputation. There have been so many movies and documentaries about her. I mean, I'm probably not telling too many people something new, except for the fact that it sure seems like she was railroaded. Like somebody didn't like her and just went after her. But I don't know. Huh. I'm going to pop off camera for a second. I'm going to put on my eyeliner and put on my lashes, and then we'll get back to talking about her actual reputation and, you know, some of the folklore that's come about since she died. Be right back. Okay, so I got my eyelashes on now. I feel a little better. There's a lot to unbox here. She went through this huge trial, was put on house arrest rather than being executed, because it would have been a massive thing. But there's some theory that maybe this was all made up. There's several authors, such as Laszlo Nagy and Dr. Irma Schladesky Cardos, who have argued that she was the victim of a conspiracy. Makes sense. This is the St. Lux Secret Admirer lip liner. Since all of this started coming about right after her husband got ill, okay? Keep in mind, he was ill and deteriorating for a couple of years when all of these accusations started building, which would have meant that Elizabeth was about to inherit all of his property. And this was a strategic location in between Royal Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. So could it be that some powerful men didn't want her to have that control? So it's argued that it was largely political motivated. The other thing is that there were a lot of religious and political conflicts going on between the Ottoman Empire and the spread of Protestantism and the extension of the Habsburg power over Hungary. So, you know, are they trying to keep this powerful woman out of the limelight? By vilifying her. Now that leads to an interesting discussion in and of itself. I forgot to highlight. We're going to highlight with a little bit of Laura Geller's Diamond Dust. This is the Baked Gelato Swirl in Diamond Dust. I love it. It's kind of swirly. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of swirly. Just a little on the top of the cheeks. And of course, make my nose look cute. And I always kind of buff out what's left on my finger on my forehead just to kind of bring it forward there. The thing of it is that the arguments against the theory that this was not like an actual thing is that there's no religious plot here. She was raised a Calvinist, not a Lutheran. To support her innocence, there was testimony of about 300 witnesses and physical evidence collected by them that was disputed. It's just the numerous bodies and all of this. It sounds like it was exaggerated because of the quantity, but you know, they think that they were, you know, the theory is that these were wounded patients that Elizabeth was tending to and not people she was killing. You know, I don't know. It's the more I look into her, the more I think maybe she was ganged up on. Okay, I have to show you this. This is Unicorn Gang Cosmetics. Small company. She's really into promoting body positivity and beauty for all. This is her liquid matte lipstick in the color Ember. And I just love this component, this cute little plastic component. I'd never seen one like it. I just absolutely love it. Ember is this beautiful, rich, orangey red. And I'm just going to use this today because I liked it. And it stays on. Does not transfer to masks and stuff. Look at that. Just a beautiful pop of color. I am going to link the Unicorn Gang website down below. I'm not sponsored. I didn't get this for free. I paid for it. But I absolutely love her lipstick. So check her out. Like I said, totally into a positive movement where, you know, beauty doesn't have one definition. And I love that because being the almost 50-year-old mom, I like the idea that a makeup company is looking at beyond the 20-something demographic, if you will, in their marketing. So I will link them down below. All right, so wrapping up here. Let's see. The Blood Countess. Did she really kill, eat, bathe in blood all these women? Was she really history's most prolific serial killer? It's easy for me to say. I keep tripping over my words. Or was she just a woman in a position of power that men didn't appreciate? And they found a way to take that power away. I'm going to let you kind of ruminate on that and make your own decision. The fantasy that the Blood Countess really was this prolific serial killer so many hundreds of years ago, and that she maybe was a vampire or bathed in blood to stay young, or all of this. It's very romantic in a dark, dreary kind of way. But the idea, the more I dug into this case and the more I saw the timeline and what was going on, it leads me to believe that maybe she was vilified for no reason other than to take her power. And when you think about it, that happens a lot to women, even today. You know, it's okay for men to, you know, cat and mouse around, but the woman that does is labeled something not so savory. Just something to think about. Anyhow, that's it for today. This is the final look with our Blood Lust palette and that beautiful Unicorn Gang lipstick, which, like I said, I'm going to link down below because I absolutely love it. Shout out to them. And I'll be back on Friday with another review. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. Once again, if there's something that you would like me to try out, a makeup tip, trick, hack, a particular product that you'd like me to review, or if you have another history that we want to look into, kind of like Elizabeth, where, you know, maybe it's not what we've been led to believe. Makes it weird history. Put it in the comments down below. In the meantime, I will see you on Friday. Ta-ta.